with me anyway.
The Arctic tundra is one of the world's harshest biomes, with long, cold winters and a desert-like climate. It is mostly found in the northern hemisphere between latitudes 55 and 70 degrees north, with only very small patches existing in the Antarctic. It can be found across northern Alaska, Canada, and Siberia, and comprises roughly 20% of the Earth's land surface. The main abiotic conditions of the Arctic tundra are that it is very cold and very dry. On average, it receives 5 to 25 centimeters of rainfall per year, with an average winter climate of -28 degrees Celsius and an average summer temperature of 3 to 12 degrees Celsius, with harsh winds blowing year-round. Winter comprises most of the year, with summer only lasting roughly 50 to 90 days. In fact, in the northernmost latitudes of the Arctic, the sun can remain below horizon level for up to 2 months, leaving the tundra in total darkness. Due to these extremely cold conditions, an impenetrable underground layer of frozen soil and dead plant matter called permafrost exists deep into the earth, remaining permanently frozen as its name suggests. Above it lies another layer of ice that thaws each summer called the active layer. Due to the impervious nature of the permafrost, when the active layer melts each summer, it remains on the surface of the earth, leaving the ground saturated with lots of standing water despite the limited rainfall. Soil in the Arctic tundra is generally poor, with low chemical fertility and low nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. Dead organic matter and excrement provides most of the soil's nutrients. In the Arctic tundra, limiting factors include the extremely cold temperatures, limited rainfall, short growing and reproductive seasons, harsh winds, limited sunlight, poor soil, and the permafrost, which inhibits the development of deep root systems. Because of this, trees are absent from this biome. In fact, tundra comes from the Finnish word tunturia, meaning treeless land. To adapt to these conditions, many animals only live in the Arctic tundra during the summer, migrating during the winter. However, year-round animals such as the caribou, the Arctic fox, the musk ox, and the vole have developed certain traits to deal with this harsh environment. The musk ox has developed a double layer of fur, one short and one long, with air trapped in the short, hollow inner layer and warmed by body heat for insulation, and the long layer used to protect from wind and water. They also have large, hard hooves, which allow the muskox to break ice and drink the water underneath. Like many animals in the tundra, the muskox eats like crazy in the summer, building a layer of fat for the winter, which it will use for insulation and energy when food is scarce. The Arctic fox has likewise developed a set of adaptations to survive in the brutal conditions of the tundra. For example, its ears, muzzle, and legs are all short to prevent the heat from escaping its body. Also, its coat changes from white in the winter to bluish-gray in the summer for camouflage. Like many tundra animals, it makes its home in burrows to escape the harsh climate. Other creatures' adaptations include hibernation in the coldest months and antler growth to scrape layers of ice off food. Common relationships between animals include birds eating the insects that breed in the standing water that forms during the summer, rapidly breeding voles feeding many predators such as the Arctic fox, owls, weasels, and wolverines, and these predators in turn keeping vole populations in check, and the caribou being hunted by wolves and wolverines. Plants such as the Arctic willow, caribou moss, Labrador tea, and the pasque flower have also developed a number of adaptations to survive, such as growing low to the ground to avoid wind, shallow root systems, growing close together, small leaf structures to retain water, the ability to photosynthesize in low sunlight and temperatures, growing small hairs for insulation, developing poison to deter animals from eating them, and the ability to become dormant in the winter when little light and water are available. The most dramatic way humans alter the Arctic tundra is through global warming, caused by the increase in greenhouse gases due to activities such as fossil fuel combustion, deforestation, cattle farming, and rice farming across the globe. This unfortunately has a number of dire effects on the fragile Arctic tundra ecosystem, which, due to its low biodiversity, is easily devastated. Possibly the greatest impact is caused by the melting of the permafrost, which used to act as a carbon sink by freezing plant matter before it could decay, and is estimated to hold 14% of Earth's carbon. As the tundra warms due to global warming, this permafrost is melting, releasing carbon dioxide as the matter begins to decay and creating a positive feedback loop. By heating the Arctic, global warming also allows animals from further south to encroach into the habitats of Arctic tundra animals, allowing them to compete for food with the native creatures. An example of this is the red fox, which has increasingly begun to compete for food with the Arctic fox in regions north of its normal habitat. To try and stop the global warming, which could eliminate the Arctic tundra biome, people should switch to alternate forms of energy and decrease fossil fuel combustion, cut down trees at a more sustainable rate, and try to limit the mass production of cattle and rice. Countries around the world, especially large developed countries like the US, should be held to the standards of the Kyoto Protocol to reduce greenhouse gas emission. A second threat to the Arctic tundra is the encroachment of humans, as building roads and houses puts heat and pressure on the permafrost, causing it to melt, in addition to reducing the habitat space of Arctic plants and animals. This can be prevented by establishing protected areas and park reserves to restrict development, limiting construction in the tundra, and limiting tourism. Although when thinking of endangered cold weather animals, people often turn their minds to the threatened polar bear, there is an animal that has suffered far more from human influence, the Eskimo curlew. The Eskimo curlew is a migratory bird, traveling thousands of miles every year so it can spend winter breeding in the Arctic tundra, spring in the Midwest prairies of the US, summer in Argentina, and fall on the North Atlantic coast. The Eskimo curlew once played an important role in the tundra by eating the insects that bred in the standing water during summer. At one time, there were thousands to millions of Eskimo curlew. However, between 1870 and 1890, they were decimated as they became targeted by market hunters for their taste, and the habitat of their main spring food source, the Rocky Mountain grasshopper, was destroyed as prairies were turned into farmlands, causing the grasshoppers to die out. Unfortunately, the Eskimo curlew was very vulnerable to extinction due to its long migration routes, as if only one of its many resting places was altered, its way of life would change dramatically. Today, it is still unknown if the Eskimo curlew exists, as there has not been a confirmed sighting since 1963. If they do exist, scientists estimate there are less than 50 left worldwide, and have suggested a captive breeding program if a nest can be found. Its greatest threat today would be the takeover of its breeding grounds by the larger and more aggressive whimbrel, and the increasing development of its habitats. Although the Eskimo curlew received official protection by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918, by that time it was too late for them to make a serious recovery. They have been on the critically endangered species list since 1967 and are presumed by many to be extinct. However, this cannot be confirmed until all the curlew's potential breeding grounds have been surveyed. Organized efforts to locate the bird began in the 1980s. However, they have thus far been unsuccessful.